Well, here we go. We've had a good introduction to GeoServer and how to serve up maps. We've learned how to interact with those maps through GeoServer as though data was coming from or requests were coming from the internet from a client browser. So what we're going to do now is take a series of 5 different lectures to progressively add more complexity to serve up maps with GeoServer. Now to do that, we're going to use something called OpenLayers or OpenLayers 3. So this is a web mapping interface. It's an API with JavaScript that allows us to serve maps on the internet. Now, there's a lot of different ones out there. So OpenLayers is just one. There's also Leaflet and some others. But I'm going to show you it basically in OpenLayers because that's what a lot of open source people in the open source and even the commercial community are now starting to use as their client and access to Internet Map Server data. Now, if you go to the openlayers.org website, you'll see different information on how to render vector maps and tiled layers. You'll also see that there is some quick start tutorials to get people started. But for something like this, if you're just moving into it for the first time, you're going to run into a lot of roadblocks. So what my hope is over these next 5 lectures is to get you comfortable with how to stand up your own applications, and then from there you can add more complexity to it. Now you can actually download all of OpenLayers so that it sits right on your server, and that's really nice because you don't have to go out and get anything else. We're not going to do that. We're going to actually link our data to OpenLayers on its own. That's on a web server that OpenLayers supports. There's pluses and minuses with doing something like that, but it's the easiest way for us to work through this. If you click on here on tutorials, you'll see that there's just an introduction, some basic concepts. So a lot of different things that you can do, but again, it will take you hours to just try to sort through this. So my hope is to get you stood up with this relatively quickly. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is open up ol_start.html. So this is a basic HTML page, and I'm using Notepad++, which I really like. You can use your own API or your own kind of a programming interface, but in this case I really like Notepad++. You may want to get that. It's free and it's pretty easy to use. You're going to see that what we have here is only 26 lines of code, and it doesn't do very much, but it's going to get us started. So let's walk through this line by line. You can see our HTML here, and that's going to end our HTML. You can see they're both highlighted purple. So that starts our HTML page, and then we have a heading, and in our heading we can start our head and end our head here, and we have a title, which is a simple map. I'm just going to call this. Now, this is the other important thing. So this is where a lot of the magic sort of happens. In OpenLayers, I need to make use of all the really fun and fancy tools that they have. Well, to do that, I can either download OpenLayers like I mentioned to you earlier, or I can just link to it. So for the style sheet, all the different styles that OpenLayers uses, I'm going to have a reference to openlayers.org, and here I'm using 3.16, and this gets me to the OpenLayers style sheet. Again, I don't want you to type all this in. I never type it in. I copy and paste it when I find stuff on the internet. So this is where I'm getting my link to the style sheet, and this is where I'm getting the source code, the actual JavaScript for OpenLayers. If you were to click on this, it will open up an obfuscated sort of text file of all kinds of code, but this is what makes OpenLayers actually work. So this is important. So you'll have this as a source. Now we get into the body. So in the body of our map, I'm going to create a division, and it's going to be a class called map. So, and I'm going to call it map. So that's going to tell me I want to use the map class. Now here's the interesting part. We're going to start writing a script. So if I click on this script, you can see everything is in here. So I want to create a new OpenLayers map. Now ol.map, what's that? Well, here I am in the OpenLayers API. or the application programming interface. You just click on API on the Open Layers site and you'll see all the different objects. So these are the main objects we see here, and one is a map. A map is made of layers and we can visualize them. If I click on map, you can see this tells me this is the core component of Open Layers, and this enables us to render a map. This, what we see here, looks very similar to what I have written here, except I've changed my view a little bit, so we won't we'll look at that a little later. And the Open Layers, or OL, if we look here, map has a bunch of things that we can do with it. So I can add a control, I can add a layer, and we're going to do that a little bit later. So we'll add layers, but right now I can get different controls that are for the map. I can get all the layers, I can get the different overlays, and as you scroll through here, there's a lot that the ol.map function does. And here is OL, which allows me to grab things like the map or like an object. So an Open Layers object, an Open Layers object event. You scroll down here, and Open Layers a source for something. So in here we can see all the different things you can do with OL. Let's go back again to ol.map. So this tells me how it gets set up, and it also tells me some of the different options that we have. So here, for instance, OL layers. This tells me all the layers that make up a map. And OL layers is returned as an array. So you start to see this is a real programming language that's opened up for us that we can start to work with, but you can see that it will take a lot of time just to learn it. So again, I'm going to just try to jump start us through this whole thing. So here I've created a new Open Layer map, and it wants to know what layers are there. Well, I want to create a new ol.layer.tile. Let's take a look at that real quickly. So here again, back in our API, we can see I've got different classes, like I've got a map, so that's a class, but I've also got some namespaces, and one is a layer. So here is ol.layer, and ol.layer allows me to bring in a layer, an image, or some vector information, or a tile. So here, this is for layer sources that provide pre-rendered tiled images that are organized by zoom levels. This is what you see with things like Google Maps or Bing Maps. And if you look in here, there's some properties about it. The opacity, do I want to be able to see through this or not? So the default is 1. Things like the source. So what is the source for the tile? Is it visible or not? What are the extents? So there's a lot of different things that the ol.layer.tile allows us access to. Let's not worry about that right now. Let's just see that what I'm doing for my layers, at least, I'm putting these layers inside an array. So in JavaScript, the array is separated by these brackets. Now, in this case, I've only got one layer. So the layer is a tile, and the source is an ol.source.osm. So back again in our API, I've typed in ol.source.osm. So this is a layer source for an OpenStreetMap tile server. So OpenStreetMap is an open source map that's a lot like Google Maps and Bing Maps that actually is been created collaboratively in an open fashion. And here is OpenStreetMap. So openstreetmap.org, it's opened up a map. I'm going to hold my shift key down and zoom in, and you'll be able to see sort of the detail that you can see in an open source type of a map that was created. And here you can see that the tiles are beginning to render. So you can see they say here, OpenStreetMap is a map of the world created by people like you and free to use with an open license. So this is OpenStreetMaps that we're looking at now through our browser, but what I want to do is look at it through my own created code. So here, again, we've selected the open layer map, or the OpenStreetMap map, and the target for this is going to be the map, which we have here. So we've created a map, and this is where the target is. Now, that map also needs a view to go along with it. Well, the view is going to have its center on these coordinates. So these are the Web Mercator coordinates, and I just happen to know where the local area is that we're working in South Carolina. So I've put those numbers in, and the zoom level is 11. So I'm going to save this, and where I'm putting it is going to be in the GeoServer web or data directory, which we've looked at in the very first lecture, and then the www directory is where we're going to have access to our browser and all of our, or not where our browser is going to have access to all the files for OpenStreetMap or for GeoServer. So now that I've saved the file in that directory, let's just go in here and we're going to say localhost 8080 GeoServer www then /ol_start.html. And there it is. This is our map. This is the area in South Carolina that we're working with. You can see I can zoom way out. I can hold the shift key and zoom back in again. I can get really close. So this is all an OpenStreetMap map that people created. And you can see there's these buildings in here and the parks. This is because people who work with GIS in South Carolina donated their time and their data to make this look really nice. But at the moment, all it is a picture. But I want you to understand, we did that and we created that picture with just these 26 lines. Now the important thing will be, let's add our data on top of it, and that's what we're going to do next.